Hi everybody, I'm in Panama and I ran into Samson Mow. And Samson Mow was up on stage with President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador in November last year.
Yeah.
And he is an advisor to El Salvador on their Bitcoin bond strategy. So I caught him.
Informal advisor.
Informal advisor. So he's not taking responsibility for where it is right now. So Samson, well, there's so much to ask you. What is the role that you play today? But just go straight into the El Salvador's Bitcoin bond, which was suggested by you. Basically, they now have it on their books that they are invested in Bitcoin. But at the same time, the Bitcoin bond, I was hoping, when I first heard about it, would be a way in which you could get the libertarian investors in Bitcoin to be supportive of a country like El Salvador and give it such backing that they can push back the IMF. But that's not what happened.
Well, it's still early. So the Bitcoin bond has not yet been released. They are still working on the laws that will enable them to do the Bitcoin bond. So there's been a number of black swan events that have slowed down things. First is the war between Ukraine and Russia, then gang violence, and now they've been dealing with the inflation and trying to lower fuel costs for the people in El Salvador. So I think they're now getting back to focusing on the economy, and what that means is they'll work on those new laws. There's a raft of 52 or 53 laws now, so including the new digital securities laws that will allow them to do the Bitcoin bond, but also things like citizenship, immigration, Bitcoin city establishment, etc., etc. But all those things are coming, and once that is out, they'll be able to release their prospectus, which will enable the sale of the Bitcoin bond.
So you think that the Bitcoin bond will still happen? Like it'll still take place?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's a novel instrument, and I think they're still planning to go full speed ahead,
right,
according to all the information I've seen so far.
Right. So the thing is this, the Bitcoin bond is one subject on the table. The other subject is the investing in Bitcoin by the state itself. And I think the markets have got the two intertwined in that the Bitcoin that the state of El Salvador has invested in has now, gone below par value.
So I don't speak for the government of El Salvador, but I'm pretty sure that it was not intended, the Bitcoin purchase was not intended to appreciate in value to repay the debt. I think their Bitcoin strategy is their Bitcoin strategy, much like MicroStrategy, right? They have their Bitcoin purchase strategy, they have their other business units, but El Salvador was not buying Bitcoin for the purpose of making a gain on their Bitcoin and then paying back the debt. I think the Bitcoin that they're acquiring is meant to be Bitcoin in their treasury for the long term.
Yeah, but that affects the rest of their debt commitments, the ratings that they get, the cost of borrowing, and so on, right?
Well, the ratings that they're getting has little to do with their Bitcoin purchase, more to do with their Bitcoin law. So all the downgrades and attacks on El Salvador have been happening just because they made the Bitcoin law and made Bitcoin legal tender.
Well, it seems that the capital markets itself takes a view that the moment you go into Bitcoin, you're a bad guy. You're a bad guy until you're able to make keep your commitments. That seems to be how the traditional capital market seems to be treating El Salvador at the moment.
Yeah, but the traditional capital markets are not that reliable, right? If you look at the 2008 financial crisis, it was those ratings agencies that allowed for the subprime mortgage crisis to happen. So you have to take all of those things with a grain of salt. And as a Bitcoiner, I don't put a lot of weight into their ratings.
Okay, point taken on that one. Now, I want to explore with you this whole idea of the Bitcoin bond itself, because when I saw that, I saw it as an opportunity for you as a renowned Bitcoiner in North America, in parts of Asia, to be able to rally the libertarian supporters of Bitcoin to support the Bitcoin bond. In other words, the libertarian universe rises in support of a nation state that has taken a position.
Right. I mean, it's definitely on the cards are on the table still, so we'll see what happens. But that's not it's not out of the question because MicroStrategy, in one of their press filings, they did say they're looking at things like Bitcoin bonds, but probably not now, maybe a couple iterations later. There are a lot of Bitcoiners that are very staunch supporters of El Salvador and are likely going to support them through the bond when it becomes available. So I think it's still early and we just have to be patient. When you're moving at the nation state level, things do take time. So El Salvador was very quick to do their Bitcoin law, but everything else does take a lot of time, and we're seeing that with the bonds and the securities laws.
Well, now that you've positioned yourself as an advisor to nation states, what other countries are talking to you? And in fact, how much further down the road is your conversation with El Salvador? Because they also have that, that Bitcoin city that they're building and so on. And actually being here in Latin America and being here in Panama, I've actually seen how several countries have got together and they're starting to talk to each other a lot more.
Yeah, so we have a number of meetings planned throughout the rest of the year, but mostly it's Bitcoiners on the ground trying to make meetings happen. So we just came out of a meeting with Tower Bank. My friend Abelito, he's a Bitcoiner in Panama. He lined that meeting up for us. So that's just an example. All of our meetings are very much grassroots organized. We did some letter writing campaigns to arrange for meetings, but technically the more efficient meetings that we've gotten are just Bitcoiners on the ground hustling and trying to get us to meet with.
What is your overall grand strategy of Bitcoin and the universe? Do you see a world where Bitcoin will eventually, phase out fiat currency and take a life of its own? What is your take on the effort of central banks trying to put in place central bank digital currency?
Right. So there's a couple of things to unpack there. So I'm a firm believer in a hyper-Bitcoinized world. So that's a world in which you don't need to go back to a fiat currency. You'll just stay in Bitcoin, spend Bitcoin, earn Bitcoin, and everyone in the world will just use Bitcoin as money. And a new financial system will be built on top of Bitcoin. In terms of CBDCs, I think they're just an abomination because you already have things like stablecoins that serve the market and serve a purpose. CBDC would largely be ineffective because you have these controls on the money supply and the risk of control of the money supply, and it's never good to have a central authority with too much power over money. And we've seen this play out in Canada where they're freezing people's bank accounts when they were supporting the Freedom Convoy or the protest from the truckers. And that's definitely not a way to move forward in the world and not a very democratic system when your funds can be effectively seized when you have a different opinion than the current ruling political class. So a CBDC would exacerbate that situation even more. So I believe that there is no good implementation of a CBDC. It could be done in theory if they valued privacy and they're using maybe something like a Bitcoin sidechain with confidential transactions, or they're using a Chaumian mint. But what we see is they're never going to go in that direction. Even in Canada, the central bank had job postings up and they're describing what they wanted for a Canadian CBDC. And if you read the lines, it's basically saying, we want it to be private, but not too private. We want to still be able to monitor and surveil and freeze you.
Okay. In fact, I'm coming. What Samson has to say actually corroborates with my book that is coming out, and that's why I wanted to meet him. And I think that the future of finance is actually going to be driven by the dysfunctional state. And you may or may not agree with everything that Samson says, but this is where the conversation is going. Thanks for talking to me today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.